At that point, I was kind of somewhat afraid of what was going to happen with my position and started asking questions about offensive security and red teaming. Took the OSCP on my own dime. When I passed it, it was one of my was happiest times because it was my first OffSec certification and finally being able to feel like I can do something rather than just blue teaming. I think for some people, they do need to be spoon fed. At the end of the day, you're responsible for your own career path and your own growth, right?
Hi, I'm Kyser Clark, and welcome to The Hacker's Cache, the show that decrypts the secrets of offensive security one bite at a time. Every week, I invite you into the world of ethical hacking by interviewing leading offensive security practitioners. If you are a penetration tester, bug bounty hunter, red teamer, or blue teamer who wants to better understand the modern hacker mindset, whether you are new or experienced, this show is for you. Hello, welcome to The Hacker's Cache. My name is Kyser Clark. I've been in the cybersecurity field for over 6 years now, and I currently work as a full-time penetration tester. Today, I have a guest who wanted to be anonymous, so we are going to call them by their handle, which is 0xD1CE, which is Dice. Dice got his start in data voice technician. He did that for about a half year, then moved into IT technician, did that for almost 2 years. Then he went into network administration, did that for 8 years, and then went into another network and system admin role for another 8 years. And then moved into a systems engineer for 5 years, and then became a penetration tester consultant, where he was there for just over 2 years. And in his current position, which has been there for just over a year now, where he's a senior penetration tester for a Fortune 100 company. For education, no college degree, which is really cool to hear. He went to trade school for IT. And then for certifications, this is a long list, so get ready. We got the OffSec Experienced Penetration Tester, that's the OSEP, the OffSec Certified Professional, that's the OSCP, the Practical Junior Web Pen Tester, that's the PJWT, Web Application Penetration Tester from Security, the Practical Network Penetration Tester, that's the PNPT, the OffSec Wireless Professional, that's the OSWP, the Certified Red Team Operator, that's the CRTO, Certified Professional Penetration Tester, that's the ECPPT, that's from Security. He's got the Microsoft Certified Azure Fundamentals, and he has a pair of CCNAs. That's the Cisco Certified Network Associate. He's got the Cisco CyberOps and the routing and switching. And then last but not least, he's got the CompTIA Network Plus and A+. So Dice, thank you so much for taking your time doing this with me. Unpack some of your experience and walk through your background.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for inviting me onto the podcast. It's an absolute pleasure. A little bit about me. I go by 0xD1CE online. I started out not really knowing what I wanted to do career-wise until my parents started talking to me about this IT thing back in my high school years. And I was always kind of into computers and tinkering, even from a younger age, breaking and fixing things, setting up a home server. But I guess I wasn't really aware that it could be a full-time job, let alone a career. So fast forward a little bit, I'm enrolled in a trade school, studying for my A+, Network Plus, CCNA, etc. And shortly after graduating from the trade school, I landed my first job at a local MSP in my hometown doing help desk, PC tech type work. And from there, I was there for a few years until a opportunity opened up at a local nonprofit company where I was hired on as a network administrator, and then eventually was promoted to a systems administrator. And after a while, I finally reached a senior systems administrator position. And while I was there, I really gained a lot of my core functional knowledge of how enterprise networks worked, how systems work, configuring firewalls, setting up networks from scratch, managing and deploying virtual and physical infrastructure, as well as like dealing with change tickets and peer reviews. And so I really grew a lot when I was there. Skip forward about 8 to 10 years, so somewhere in there, I am working for a Class 1 U.S. railroad company as a systems engineer. And that's where I started working more on the blue team, analyzing Splunk logs, responding to EDR alerts, that sort of thing. And then around that time, the big health scare, COVID, happened back in that 2019, 2021 timeframe. And as you know, pretty much everything kind of came to a halt around the world, let alone the shipping industry. Semi-trucks wasn't really transporting goods as much. Trains were kind of delayed because the cargo ships stuck in the harbor, things like that. And so at that point, I was kind of somewhat afraid of what was going to happen with my position, even though I was safe for the time being. I wasn't really sure where things were going with COVID. So I started hearing some different talks about people taking the OSCP from some of my coworkers in the office, and started asking questions about offensive security and red teaming and some of these technologies that I haven't ever touched. And so I eventually decided to give it a shot and took the OSCP on my own dime. And long story short, I studied the material for about a month and scheduled and passed the exam on my first try. And man, when I passed it, it was one of my was happiest times because it was my first OffSec certification, and finally being able to feel like I can do something rather than just blue teaming. It was awesome. So now I'm working for a Fortune 100 company as a internal pen tester, where I do everything from mobile apps, mobile pen tests, even hardware pen tests.
Nice. What an incredible story. Hey, I wanted to tell you about my new cybersecurity insider list, where you get raw, unfiltered cybersecurity advice, tips, and hot takes, plus exclusive first looks at my content delivered directly to your inbox every single week. No fluff or spam, just valuable content. Head over to kyserclark.com/newsletter and level up your cybersecurity knowledge today. Once again, that's kyserclark.com/newsletter. There's also a link in the description. All right, now back to the show. Are you ready for the rapid fire round?
Sure.
So the new audience members, for those who don't know, the rapid fire questions, Dice will have 30 seconds to answer 5 questions. If he answers all 5 questions in 30 seconds, he will get a bonus 6 question that's not related to cybersecurity. All right, Dice, your time will start as soon as I stop asking the first question. Here we go. Do you think cybersecurity is underfunded in most organizations?
Yes.
Favorite security conference?
DEF CON.
Most overrated cybersecurity certification?
The Network Plus.
Do you think the cybersecurity industry is growing fast enough?
No.
Most critical security vulnerability today?
That's a tough one. I'm going to cheap out. I'm going to say Log4j.
That was just over 30 seconds. So I'm going to give it to you because we're going over the internet and there's latency and stuff. So I'm going to give it to you. So congratulations, you have completed the challenge and have earned the right to answer a silly bonus question. The silly bonus question you can provide is as much or as little explanation as you want. And here it is. Is it pronounced GIF or GIF?
Oh man, that's a hard one. I, in my opinion, I think it's pronounced GIF.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I'll
That's
fight to the death on that one.
100% agree with you because my argument is, we don't call it a GIF. We don't say, hey, let me put some GIF wrap on that GIF, That's all.
Absolutely.
That's my argument there. All right, so I thought your most interesting response. This is a little bit of a hot take. So you said most overrated cybersecurity certification. You said Network Plus, and I want to know why you think that Network Plus is an overrated cybersecurity certification. Technically, it's not even a cybersecurity certification, but it is a common certification people get on their path into cybersecurity.
Right. The reason why I think it's an overrated certification is because there are so many companies, especially starting out, that are wanting to see your Network Plus, your Security Plus, some of these lower level positions or certifications rather. That yeah, they're great in the long term for a kind of a foundational knowledge, but they in pen testing and offensive security, they don't really do a ton for you.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like it's not like a hard requirement for the Network Plus. I do think the Network Plus is pretty good for like learning networking basics. Obviously, you can learn them in other ways, but I'm a certification kind of person. I need to have some sort of challenge to like kind of cement the information in my brain. I feel like certifications help me with my imposter syndrome because it's like I can read a book 3 times and like, do I really know this? I don't know unless you actually give me some sort of exam or some sort of test. So that's why I went for the Network Plus just because I did the CCNA and I was like, well, I might as well get the Network Plus because I've already kind of got the knowledge there. but I usually tell people to get the network plus before security plus. I mean, you can skip if you want to, but I think the fundamentals are good. But like you said, for like his job requirements, uh, there might be a couple jobs that ask for it, but it's not like, like prestige, like super prestige or anything.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's just like the CEH. That's another certification that it doesn't really do a ton for you whenever you're actually doing this for a living, and yet they still have it on job listings, and it doesn't really make sense in 2024 with the current landscape, especially with like TCM and some of their certifications that they have. There's a lot better training out there for cybersecurity, especially in infosec, right, for offensive security.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned CEH because I asked this question on another episode before, and the response was OSCP, which was kind of mind blowing to me because I love the OSCP. But that's beside the point. When I asked it the first time, I said, when I think of that question, most overrated cybersecurity certification is the CEH. Like that would be my response to that question if someone asked me. But it's funny you say that because I actually had someone I went to Air Force Technical School with. They got out of the military and they're trying to. They got out of the military and they got into an IT role and they're trying to break into cybersecurity and was asking me for advice on all this stuff. And was asking me like, "Hey, does the CH worth it?" I'm like, "No, I don't. I don't think the CH is worth it." And then he was like, "Well, some company like declined me because I didn't have a CH." I was like, "Really?" I was like, "I did not know that." But the reason why is because it's a DoD 8570 certification. So if you want to work for the government, I would say the CH is probably worth it if you are in like the government space, but especially the federal government. But other than that, I wouldn't go for it because I think it's kind of overrated and kind of overpriced.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Am I allowed to ask your questions at all, or kind of chime
Oh
back?
yeah,
'Cause I was going to ask
yeah.
you what you think on the new OSCP Plus, because isn't that DoD certified too?
So the OSCP Plus isn't on the DoD 8570 list yet, and someone told me that they're actually changing it from DoD 8570 to something else. It's some other new requirement. So it's not on that list yet, but I think it has a good shot at getting there, and I think that's one of the major reasons why they would decide to roll out the OSCP Plus. So it's really hard to tell what's going to happen with that. I think it's a good move because for it does open up more doors for OSCP Plus holders, but at the same time, I feel like it's going to hurt people who just have a regular OSCP because when the Security Plus went from good for life to one that you had to renew a lot, or not a lot, but every 3 years. Employers no longer respect the good for life certification. Like they specifically want the Security Plus CE, which is because the CE version is on the DoD 8570 because you have to renew it constantly, which is one of the requirements for the DoD 8570. But because of that, the Security Plus Good for Life is technically good for life, but no one cares about it. So I'm worrying that the OSCP Good for Life falls into that camp. So that's my biggest concern. And my other concern with the OSCP Plus is like, I hate paying maintenance fees. So I'm hoping that they're affordable, which let's be honest here, they probably won't be because, OffSec stuff is really
Yeah,
expensive. And that's one of the bigger pain points. I mean, if the maintenance fees aren't bad, then that's a good thing because then we can get a certification that helps us get into government positions. If you're interested in government positions, which a lot of people are, and let's be honest, the U.S. federal government is the largest employer in the world, so it does open up a lot of doors for anybody who has it. So there's a lot of good, and there is some potential cons, but we won't know for sure until the dust settles because it might not ever end up on the DoD 8570 cert, and then it was all for nothing. You know what I mean? So
right.
we'll just
Yeah,
have to wait and see.
yeah. I haven't done a ton of research on the new certification myself, but I thought I heard somewhere that that's why they were expiring the typical OSCP. And moving to this new model. I mean, not to say that you can't have your standard OSCP, but moving forward to be DoD compliant. I thought I heard that somewhere, but I may be wrong.
Yeah, a lot of people were saying that. A lot of people were saying that, and I even said that in my OSCP Plus video. But honestly, it's just speculation at this point. That's what people think. That's why OffSec made the move, and I mean, OSSEC did say they wanted to do what is the ISO, one of the ISO standards. I forget the numbers, but they specifically called out that, and that's like a precursor to like being a DoD 8570 certification. So
Gotcha.
I think that's has a lot to do with it for sure. So you spent a lot of time in IT, over 16 years. And I want to know like what made you go, from IT to cybersecurity in particular.
So I guess the short answer is COVID, but to go a little more in depth, I guess the long answer is whenever I started working for the railroad as a systems engineer and taking on more of a blue team role, where I was managing Splunk logs, reviewing them, responding to EDR alerts. That's whenever I started to get that spike of passion for security and was more interested in the security side of things rather than the traditional networking and server infrastructure that I had been doing for the last 16 years. And so, whenever I started getting exposed to the industry as a whole, I just started to do my own research and start reading up on it and started talking to coworkers to gain their thoughts and kind of gain some mentors within the industry. And that's really where I got my interest to move more into security as a whole.
So you went in that systems engineer role. Do you count that as like a cybersecurity role, or do you count like your first pen testing consulting role as your first cybersecurity role?
So I would consider the system engineer role a security role, but it was more of a infrastructure security role, if you will, where we're spinning up new firewalls, responding to certain EDR alerts that correspond to servers that I'm over, things like that. A little later on, whenever I started doing consulting for pen testing, is whenever I started to kind of grow and expand my knowledge and started putting some of that into more of a actual practice rather than just in training.
And then, so what made you go from your consulting role to your non-consulting role?
To be completely honest with you, consulting is so different than internal testing. There's certain play that you have as an internal tester that you don't have as a consultant, and then just some of the meetings and the processes that you have to do in a consulting role that you don't have as an internal tester is what I would say is like the biggest factor for me wanting to go internal versus staying in a consulting role.
Is the non-consulting role, is it slower pace than consulting?
It's a little slower. There's a lot more impact that I have within the company that I work for, and being able to establish change within the company that I don't wouldn't have within a consulting role. So it can differ a little bit, right? It can be a little fast paced depending on the type of engagement and the priority that we have for the particular engagement that I'm on. For example, if I'm doing a hardware test, it may be at a slightly different priority for compliance reasons to have tested than if I'm doing a web app test, for example.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so do you see yourself ever going back to consulting, or you kind of like being an internal tester way more?
Yeah, I think for the company that I'm in, I think I want to stay internal. I kind of dread having those briefing and debriefing calls and going through that entire process. So there's a reason why I've been in IT for so long and now security. I'm not a super people person, so there's a reason why I'm on the back end of things in the shadows, so to speak.
Oh man, you're doing good on this recording. Your voice, you could be on a radio show. I think your voice is good for podcasting.
You're,
So
you're too kind. You're too kind.
I've asked this question multiple times this podcast, but it's one of the biggest challenges that I'm facing right now myself. So I'm going to ask it again because you have a unique insight that other people don't have, and I want to get your insight on this. So for the OSEP, the OffSec Experience Penetration Tester, what are some tips you can give someone who has an OSEP that's looking to get the OSEP? What are some tips to success and pitfalls that they can avoid, like to get that certification?
So this may be somewhat of a hot take. I don't think the labs actually do much justice for the exam. I would say go through all the course material, do a lot of research on your own, into the content that you're learning in the material, and try to build a lab of your own if you can, right? A lot of the material covers AV bypasses, EDR bypasses, things like that. Start practicing on your own and get a feel for some of the lighter development work that you have to do to create your own custom code to bypass EDR, things like that. Start dabbling and doing research on your own.
Why don't you think the labs prepare you? Because you're actually the first. That is a hot take, by the way. It could be because everyone says that the labs, like, if you can do good in the labs, you'll do fine in an exam. So I'm kind of curious why you think like the labs aren't that good.
So without, I guess, revealing too much information, I don't know if it's due to the different exam environments, but it actually took me 2 times to pass the OSEP. The first time I failed miserably, and I just had a hard time. But I think looking back and taking it a second time, I think the labs were not exactly a one-to-one of what was in the exam. And that's the only reason why I say they don't really do justice for the exam. I think doing your research and kind of living and breathing that mentality of trying to bypass EDR or AV is going to help you out far more than what the labs actually did.
That makes
Again,
sense.
just my hot take.
No, I love hot takes. That's why I always ask people to provide a hot take at the end of our episode. Uh, so that's cool that you say that, and that opinion actually aligns with a lot of other OffSec certs. I think the OSEP is probably the only one where people are saying like, yeah, the labs correlate to the exam really well, but the OSCP people say, yeah, I didn't learn nothing in those labs on the exam, and then I'm currently doing the OSWA, and I'm like, the labs are okay, but I just feel like I wish there was more in the labs. The reason why I passed OSCP on my first try was because there was 50 something labs, and then the OSWA only has 8, and it's like, man, I wish I had more practice. So that opinion definitely aligns with like other people's struggles with like the other OffSec certs for sure. I have a coworker who did OSWA, and he's like, yeah, he's like, screw those labs.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the OSWA is actually one that I'm interested in taking. I've been doing a lot more API and web app testing in my current job than I've ever have. But then again, the company I work for is massive, and that's one technology or type of technology that isn't really going anywhere. So it's one of those things I feel like if you're going to be successful as a pen tester, unless you're doing something very, very specific, position wise, it's never going to hurt to learn web apps and API testing.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. That I feel like just having a little bit of web app experience, even though I don't have a web app certification, I'm still doing web app testing because I went to the OSWA course and I've done the exam twice now. And even though I haven't passed a lot of those techniques I'm using in my day-to-day work on web app testing, but I totally agree with you. It helps you land a position, and then it helps you, especially if you're in consulting, because I would say half of the work, if not more than half the work in consulting, is web apps. So if you don't know web apps, then you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, in my opinion. If you're especially if you're trying to break in, the only time you can really, in my opinion, like you said, can avoid web apps is if you're in like a really specialized role or like an internal role. But most consulting roles, from my understanding, I've only been in two, but from my understanding, it's web apps are super prevalent, and that's like the bulk of what clients are asking companies to pen test.
Yeah, one thing that we're seeing a lot more of within our work queue for the company I work for is AI pen tests, bypassing guardrails and prompt injection, things like that. I don't know if you've seen anything like that in the consulting side, but yeah, that's a whole new thing that's coming up too. That I don't feel like there's a ton of knowledgeable testers out there in the industry. So I feel like if that's something that you can learn and pick up. I know Portswigger has some labs for LLM testing, but I feel like there's not really a ton of people out there with that experience.
Yeah, you are right. I think I agree with you there because I don't haven't done a whole lot of AI testing. However, I did do a web app that had a AI chatbot built into the web app, And that's just something that's going to get put into almost every web application going forward. Everybody's got, oh, we got an AI for that, you know? So I feel like web app testers need to learn how to do the prompt injection and all of those. There's like a whole OS top 10 for AI testing, but there's a lot of web apps that have AI built into them. So learning how to test AI is going to set you apart for in this field, in my opinion. And like you said, there's not a lot of people that know how to do it, and I think it's a good opportunity to jump onto, especially if you're trying to break in the field or trying to stay relevant in the field. So I think the hard part with learning how to test AI is that there's not a lot of resources out there. There's the Coursera Academy that has the AI testing modules, but I don't know any other like AI testing resources out there.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully, there's somebody in the industry that will come in and fill that gap, like a, TCM or somebody that can actually provide some cheap training, but good training. We
Yeah, I'm
definitely need
hoping
it.
TCM jumps into that market because they already have an IoT hacking, they already have a mobile hacking. So I feel like they like to jump in those like specialized pen testing areas. And AI testing is definitely a specialized testing area. So that would be really cool if they jumped into that. I think it's needed in this industry very badly. So the first one to make a certification for AI pen testing, I think it's they're gonna be they're gonna be in a pretty good shape. So let's go ahead and get into the last question. So the final question of every episode is, do you have any additional cybersecurity hot takes or hidden wisdom you would like to share with the audience?
For once, I don't. I think I'm going to be your first guest. I don't think I have anything for you, sir.
Oh, all right, we gotta drop a nugget bomb. So I started a new thing, audience, and it is my email newsletter. And the way you sign up to my email newsletter is you go to my website, kyserclark.com, you put your email in there, and you give me your email. And every Monday, I give all my email subscribers my fresh piece of content that doesn't touch my YouTube channel, my podcast, and my blog. So it's time exclusive. So this stuff might make it its way to the YouTube channel, the blog post, and the podcast. But the email that I sent today was baby cybersecurity enthusiast. By the time this episode hits, that email was sent out a month ago, so it's still time exclusive content. So I'm just going to go ahead and say this. What I mean by baby cybersecurity enthusiast is I get a lot of questions about like how to break into the field. I feel like I get a lot of the same questions, and I make a lot of content to answer these questions, and I feel like people just aren't getting it. I don't know what it is, but I feel like a lot of people need to be spoon fed information. And sometimes it drives me nuts. It drives me a little bit nuts. So here's my word of wisdom. You have to be able to think for yourself, right? You can't be expected someone to spoon feed you answers all the time. It's okay to ask questions, but when it's a common question, the chances of me answering the question, if you dive in my DMs, is going to be slim because I've already answered the question in a podcast or a video or one of my live streams. So I would say consume my content before you ask me questions in my DMs because I can't reply to everybody, unfortunately. And that's a little bit of a hot take, but and it's wisdom at the same time. So what do you think about that, Dice?
I think you're spot on with that. I think for some people, they do need to be spoon fed. At the end of the day, you're responsible for your own career path and your own growth, right? And if you are truly interested in a subject, whether it be learning a language, learning infosec, learning pen testing, what have you, at the end of the day, it's up to you as the person to grow your path and become another professional. So do your research. Don't be afraid to Google things. Don't be afraid to ask things. And if you can, help mentor somebody who's coming up beside you. Sometimes teaching somebody that you already know actually opens the gate for yourself. I may know it may seem a little bit backwards, but help mentor the next generation of infosec people that are coming up that are where you are 2 years ago. We're always learning and growing, so help the next generation.
Good words to live by. All right, Dice. If the audience wants to get a hold of you, I know you want to be anonymous, but that is your online handle, so I'm assuming they can get a hold of you if they want. Is that okay? Or
If you can find me, you can contact me.
he he is a ghost in the wires, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to get a hold of me, audience, LinkedIn is the best place to get a hold of me. And also all my contact information is on my website, kyserclark.com. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you haven't already reviewed the show, if you're listening on Spotify or podcasts, do me a favor, leave a review, leave a 5-star review if you think the show deserves it. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Until then, I'll catch you on the next episode. This is Kyser, signing off.